We will talk today about something that I feel really interesting, something that is psychological and that is touching me as an end user. We will talk about why people hate exercises.
Dum, dum, dum.
And to discuss about everybody, we all have clients and we all know that they don't like it that much. Sometimes you find a one that is like crazy with exercise, but those are like a little iceberg part of it. To discuss about that, we have an expert on the subject. We have Nathalie. Nathalie, can you introduce yourself as short as possible, because I know it can be long. You have done a lot of it.
When I was a small child, no, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for having me, Etienne. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all, especially because we're talking about the motivation behind exercise and exercise psychology, which is really my purpose, to help people find pleasure and joy in exercise. So I'm really happy to be here and talking about this. I have been in the fitness industry for almost 3 decades now, as a group fitness instructor, as a personal trainer, as a manager, as an executive. My last big executive job was as vice president of CanFit Pro, and I've been now back close to family for 4 years in Quebec, where I continue to dedicate myself to help fitness professionals and businesses thrive in their careers and businesses, and essentially support the industry in order to keep serving the people in our communities that need us so much. So that's essentially what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, and right now you are working with people in the industry. You're also working with the FIC. We are working there together at the Fitness Industry Council, which is named like. How will you describe the FIC?
So thank you. Yes, I'm happy to be on the board as vice president of FIC, and the Fitness Industry Council of Canada is the advisory and lobbying association for the fitness industry, and so we represent gyms, studios, etc., in their relationships and their work with government as well as with the public, in order to make sure that we are as protected as possible as an industry. So it's been a fair bit of work, as you can imagine, the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And we're working a lot exactly on all of those subjects of what are the problems of the fitness industry right now, and of the people working in the fitness industry, and how we can help them more. And it's in this mindset that we are talking about today, the relationship with the training. So let's dive into the topic. And if anybody, you have questions while we are having the webinar, feel free to ask them into the chat, and I will ask them to Nathalie for having her input on it. Most fitness professional that is right now listening to us will meet clients that have some bad relationship with physical activity. We already heard it. Normally, that's pretty much common. Will you say that the general population has a bad relationship with physical activity?
Yes. And the next question. No, I'm kidding. Absolutely.
That's clear. Next question.
And the reality is, I mean, if we're talking about statistically, we absolutely do. So we know that about at maximum, depending on where we're talking to people in Canada or people outside of that, less than 20% of the population actually exercises as adults in a structured physical activity format, in a gym with trainers, etc. More than 70% of the population is sedentary. 67% of the population has firm intentions. That's one of my favorite stats. Firm intentions of beginning an exercise program. And out of the ones that do begin, half of them, 50% of them, drop out of the exercise program. So we do have a sedentary pandemic happening in all over the world, and certainly in the countries in which we work. And there is a bad relationship for most of them. And to the extent of that, you know, if you think about it, to your iceberg analogy from earlier, we only get the tip of the iceberg anyways. We get the ones that are like, have come to terms with the fact that they don't prefer exercise, they don't like exercise, but they will still be like, I'm still going to try it. The reality is exercise takes time, oftentimes can cost money, and produces pain. it's not normal for you to be, yay, please give me more of that. If you understand human behavior, that doesn't make sense for something to be painful and for it to take a long time to see results. Like, who in their right mind would get engaged in that? We do, and I think we need to think about stepping outside of our statistically abnormal selves and realize that for most of the population, it's not attractive by any sense. And it's perfectly reasonable for it to not be attractive for most people.
And this will be really clear when we look at stats. No matter the country we're talking about, it will be always around like 7 to 15% of the population that is inscribed into a gym or a fitness facility. So that's pretty much clear with just these stats that we're talking with the people that want to try and that we're talking with the specific kind of people. But will you say that, and is this stats an announcement or like a clear proof that the fitness industry also contribute to this bad outlook of and on exercises?
100%. And we didn't necessarily create it because most people's bad relationship with physical activity, right, or unconsciously, yes, agreed. We didn't necessarily create it because it started before adulthood. So if we think about where, I mean, the logic of it quite simply is most people most people have lived an experience in childhood, whether it was in phys ed class or in a sport that they were involved in or a physical activity they were involved in childhood, where exercise was used as a punishment. And like perfect example is you're in gym class, you show up late. What do you need to do? You're either doing laps and you're running or you're doing push-ups. You're playing basketball and you do something at practice that isn't what the coach expects. And again, you're punished with exercise. And to have that continue on over and over and over, I mean, any group fitness instructor will tell you, whenever we say, let's do push-ups, all you hear is like, whatever. And it's because for decades, push-up suck. Now we've grown up to burpees because apparently we just like hurting people. But that's where it came from.
More.
And and then those people grow up and then they come to us as trainers, instructors, coaches, etc. And they come to us. And we were we're not that old of an industry. We were the no pain, no gain industry for a long time. When I came into the industry, that started to shift. But even when I came into the industry, we were the burn off your, so, you know, we're recording this around this season, burn off your Halloween candy. Or, you know, if you want to have a glass of Pinot Grigio tonight, do 5 more burpees. And so this concept of constantly being exercise as punishment for the reward that is food, for the reward that is relaxation, for the reward that is I deserve this piece of cake because I worked hard in my class today. I have to have a salad today because I didn't do my workout, is commonplace in all of us. And it's been something that we've, in other words, not created, but perpetuated. And there's a shift in the industry away from that. And I think the last few years of people realizing how the lack of exercise had impact on mental health, we're starting to finally understand that we need to disassociate the punishment, the pain, the negativity around exercise, and the positivity around everything else. To not use it as a means to a way, but rather figure out a way for it to be a reward in itself. Again, basic human psychology, for it to be a reward versus a punishment, will help us grow those percentages that are abysmal that you and I listed earlier.
Yeah. Clearly. And for people that it's their first time, maybe we have some French speakers that is following us normally in French and now are in English. But for the new people that are listening to our webinar, you will see, and this is one of our goals into our webinar, is to not just talk about a problem, but to find perspective of future and solutions. This is really what we are talking always with the intervenant we are calling, is how can we, now that we know this is the problem, and 100% of the people listening to us agree with you that that their client have some issue with physical activity. Now we understand from where it's coming. It's coming from social habits, like from historical, from our childhood, from the way we have been presented fitness since always. But now, how can we change that perspective? That's what I want to talk about.
Absolutely.
So maybe first, how can we, or what are the first steps to understand a client relationship with physical activity? How can I see what my client think about that?
I think the first piece of it is removing the assumption that if they're coming in, they have a good relationship with exercise. So just like anything else, the first piece is awareness, right? And congratulations to everybody that's listening to us. Either it's live or it's somewhere, or it's on the recording, because it means you're aware of this. You're not watching a webinar right now about, I don't know, 87 more things to do with a kettlebell. You're watching a webinar having to do with how you can have a better relationship with your client. So having the awareness that it is a risk, having the awareness that half of the people that will show up will want to drop out or will drop out within the first 3 to 6 months, we need to assess the people that are coming in. Understanding how their history is in relationship to exercise, inquiring about that. So I, for example, yes, will do some physical assessments with my clients, but I am much more inclined to do assessments along readiness for change, assessments along their relationship with physical activity. The last time you exercised, how did that go? How did it make you feel? Have you tried to exercise in the past and given up? In a similar way that a health professional will do when somebody wants to do smoking cessation, and they find out, have you tried to quit smoking before? How did it go? What are the obstacles that were in the way? So we can look at overcoming them. I think we go in really hot, really cheerleader. It's going to be great. And we sell the benefits. You're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get this, because we're trying to oversell the benefits of it. People know what the benefits are. The issue is the time in between and the pain in between those activities and the benefits that come from there. Two key components for those of you that might understand, might have looked into exercise psychology. There's two things in behavior modification we assess that give us a really good predictor of how it's going to go. One of them is self-efficacy, and the other one is outcome expectations. Self-efficacy is like self-confidence, but it's related to one behavior in particular. Most people's self-efficacy in sticking with exercise is really low because they haven't had good experiences with it. They, again, more than half of them will quit, right? So assessing someone's self-efficacy and then assessing their expectations of what the outcome has. Oftentimes they're really high. Oftentimes they're like, I will work out and 3 weeks from now, my life will change. Because that's how we're selling it. We're selling it as the fountain of youth, the fountain of health, the fountain of weight loss, and all of these things. And so from an
booty challenge in April.
Yeah, 100%. Everything is going to change. Your relationships, and that's because that's what we've been doing, is like you're going to sleep better, you're going to feel better. Your life is going to be a better version of yourself. So here's the risk. Low self-efficacy, high outcome expectations is a recipe for disaster. What we need to do is manage the expectations, including the timelines of the results that they can expect, and build the self-efficacy. And that means we focus a little bit less on what are outcome goals and more on process goals. Outcome goals will be the weight loss, the physical benefits of physical activity. Process goals are show up. And saying you come twice a week, and after week 1, if they showed up twice, that needs to be celebrated. That's a process goal. Making their lunch a couple of times during the week instead of going out and eating lunch, for example. That's a process-oriented goal. It's all the behaviors that are necessary in order for them to get to the end. And again, just showing up is most of the majority of the population doesn't do that. So acknowledging and celebrating the process will build their self-efficacy, their confidence towards exercise, and managing the expectations of what will come when will help mitigate the big differential between those two things that are really, really high risk.
Yeah, which is really fitting with like our even the university for the kinesiologist or for personal trainer and information, they are mostly always targeted about how to bring an athlete to a marathon. Like they are always for a really specific goal. But what you are telling us, if I can say it differently, it's really how you are changing for the goal is lifestyle and habits. The goal is to improve the life of the person in general, not just, even if the person is arriving saying, I want to enter in those jeans again. The goal is to change this expectation to help the client to have a better lifestyle and habits in general.
I mean, and it can all fall under the category of performance. If you think of yourself as a performance coach, you just figure out where that person wants to perform. And maybe that person wants to perform, again, in their self-esteem. Maybe that person wants to perform in how they're managing anxiety. Maybe that person wants to perform in their levels of energy, which we can assess. This is all part of those lifestyle assessments that some of us do that are focused a bit more on this type of clientele, or these people that have been have failed in the past, and we bring them on. So we assess their energy, we assess their quality of sleep, we assess their capability, their resilience towards making decisions during the day, and all the things that exercise can impact, and their instant gratification ones. So that's a really, really big thing we need to acknowledge, Etienne, is most of the results we sell exercise on are long-term to come. There's no instant gratification from exercise. It hurts and it takes time. There is for us, again, it's not about us. It's about the people we want to help, and we're abnormal statistically. So for them, that instant gratification of what's your level of anxiety if you're having a tough day? What's your level of tension and anxiety before we start? What's your level of tension and anxiety when we're done? And they're like, oh, it went from 7 to 3. Instant gratification, mentioning those things, calculating, measuring, and sharing that as much as we would calculate, measure, and share calories burned, reps done, load pushed, intensity, duration, etc. Utilizing all of that. And it doesn't take a lot to keep people going, because they will text in the next day and said, you were right, I slept better. Immediate, that same day they will sleep better, especially if they're acknowledging those pieces of it there. So there's lots that we can do to help connect with that and help build it maybe a little bit more towards wellness and mental health, lifestyle, as you said, rather than the results that we traditionally sold and
the number of push-ups.
And it can still be quantitative, you know, there can still be a quantitative measurement, just something that's different than traditional physical results.
Yeah, clearly. And when you say quantitative, it's clear. Like, we have a form questionnaire in Hexfit that you can send daily. That is the quality of sleep you had this morning, and it's on 10, if I well remember, but the client can fulfill it every morning, and more he will train, more he will be healthy in general, better that number will be. That's quantitative. For sure. Okay, so now we understand a little bit more the client relationship with physical activity. Maybe how can we improve the client outlook to exercise? What we have said that in his childhood, it has been always a punition.
Yeah, so knowing that it was a form of punishment, where can we go for it from here? So the first thing we would do is I would adapt my session. So understanding, again, and the tracking that we have on Hexfit, which lets you know what the person is bringing in, meeting the person where it's at. And I feel like we have an idea of what we're going to accomplish, understanding that it's not just the exercise and sets and reps, but during a training session, can we assess how a person's feeling and then set a goal for that, and then perhaps adapt what we had planned for that day. So if they had a horrible night's sleep, maybe your goal is less caloric expenditure and sets and reps and everything else. Maybe your goal is more preparing them for what's going to happen. I'll take for a specific example. If it's a woman in menopause, chances are a HIIT training at 6 p.m. is not going to give him a great night's sleep. So understanding how hormones have a big impact on sleep and how actually the stressor of exercise can be managed for that. Maybe including things differently in your warm-up, maybe including things differently in your cool down, having a few minutes that are focused on health. I had a training session with my trainer this week, and even me, because again, this is stuff that is really habit for us. I'm looking at it and it's 15 minutes in and I haven't moved yet. And I know that that's normal. I know that we're talking about some stuff I'm having with my knee. We're looking at where we're going to project afterwards. That still counts in the hour. It's not 60 minutes of, you come in and you have to be moving right away. Otherwise, it doesn't do that. This is where health and wellness and fitness coaching comes in versus just the programming of the exercise. So that's the first bit, disassociating.
And you are, if I can just say, and you are the fitness professional.
Yeah,
so
imagine.
It's clear that as a client, I'm arriving with an expectation, like to move from the first minutes. But you are the fitness professional. So if we need to take a different path, you are the person that need to guide us to this direction.
100%.
You need to say, no, for the first 15 minutes, we will talk. And that will be fine.
100%.
As a client, I will follow. You are the professional.
And even at the end, giving people a space. Again, if they're going, especially if they're doing it on virtual, right? Because this is virtual that I train with my coach who's, a couple of hours away. And at the end, I'm like, maybe I have a budget meeting 18 seconds later. Like, give me time to come down and transition piece, which we forget people don't have sometimes in virtual. So here's something that I would suggest, again, when it comes to what we can do. Saying stop associating exercise with punishment is one thing, but because I understand positive psychology, I will say associate with something else. So when we evaluate the predictors of exercise adherence, whether or not somebody will stick with their physical activity program, there is one factor that if it is included in the programming, always pops up as the best predictor of whether or not somebody will stick around. And I've asked this question in education sessions and programming and conferences that I've done for 25 plus years. Oftentimes, the answer that I get is results, because that's what we think about. The reality is it's actually fun. Pleasure, because people are moved towards pleasure and away from pain. That's just how the human works. Pleasure and fun is the best predictor of exercise adherence. If the pleasure and fun is not there, nobody will stick around long enough to get results. Again, aside from us, because we're statistically abnormal. So instead of thinking, I'm not going to punish them, think about how you integrate fun and fun for them, which is not often the same thing as what's fun for us. So if you don't know what is pleasurable for them within exercise, it's going to be really hard to do that. So you've got a client that the last time they had fun in exercise is when they played basketball. Great. Come on in, and maybe the warm up is some sort of like a basketball influence drill, because that's fun for them. And as long as they're getting warmed up, then we're cool, right? Maybe you incorporate that. We need to know what movement, what physical activity, what physical exertion was fun for them, and see if we can incorporate that as much as possible, especially to get them past those first 3 months. So incorporating something like that would be my best tip. Safe, fun, and then results, because the results are never going to come unless the safe and fun is there.
Yeah, clearly. And I'm assuming in everything you're saying that the motivation can be a big issue also for someone who had a bad outlook on exercises. Motivation can come, like lack of motivation can come from multiple places, like lack of pleasure, like you're saying, but it can also come from external elements. Like, can you share some example of fitness goal that you will set for this type of clientele that has some motivational problem?
To be clear, yes. And to be clear, I'll set them from everybody, because when they are showing up and giving you hundreds of dollars, that's when they're at their highest level of motivation. That's really when they pay you, when they invest in you, when they buy the program, they buy the membership, they buy the sessions, you have to understand this is the highest level they will have for a long, long, long time. Assume that from there, everything is going to be less than that. So that's the first thing. Again, let's get rid of the assumption that this is normal for them. This is their highest level of motivation. For everyone, I will, to your point earlier of having these ideas of including the health questionnaire and reassessing health along the way, I will absolutely discuss, motivate, and stimulate and assess continually their mental health improvements, their capability to withstand those things, their sleep, like you talked about before, their levels of cognitive health. We'll talk about that, how exercise actually has an impact on decreasing the inflammation around the memory, around the the hypothalamus, and that's the memory center of the brain. And that's why we're doing coordination. So I'm not doing coordinated drills with you to make you feel like you're uncoordinated. I'm doing them to prepare us for coordination and stimulating cognitive health. So it's Sudoku in movement. But I'll explain these things, the benefits of it that are there, that go beyond the physical aspect of it, in case that can be the issue with that. I also always have a plan B, which is on the days where you're not motivated, here's what you do. And it's not, don't eat carbs. It's what is something that you can do on the days that you're not motivated? What's your favorite thing to do? And they're like, I love walking my dog. And it's like, great. So let's add 10 minutes to the dog walk. Or let's focus on, if you had a really bad night's sleep, let's have a whole day that's not focused on you trying to be energetic by drinking a lot of hot coffee. Let's have a whole day on preparing you for a better night the next night. So how are we managing your cortisol and melatonin levels? Because that matters more, because an unrested person probably shouldn't be exercising at a high intensity. Let's manage all of those things to see what we do, especially if their goal is weight loss. As you know, high cortisol levels and weight loss rarely work together. So programming all of these things and talking about them constantly in the same way that we talk about physical results and like, oh, that's great, you did that. Maybe it's great that they decrease the intensity that day. Maybe it's, and it's one thing that I say, clearly. It's again, I'm translating some of the stuff that I use in group fitness a lot. I say this a lot and maybe it's because I'm also a yoga teacher, but what I say all the time is I make suggestions, you make decisions. If you're looking to this today, then here's the intensity which we can work with. If your focus is having a better night's sleep tonight, then this is the intensity we should be working at. Is it 8 on 10? Maybe it's 4 on 10. And that actually is better for you than an 8 on 10 right now. We need to keep communicating this to them constantly.
Yeah. And I really love in what you're saying. It's always, and it's for sure that your client will at some point have a reduction in his motivation.
100%.
That's just normal. It's 100% obligatory. So this is not the situation, or the question is not how do I block that motivational drop? It's more how do I manage it? When it will happen, I'm taking care of the client, I'm changing the plan, I'm changing the goal, I'm changing the goal of the day or the long-term goal, I'm changing it for today.
Yes, and I love that, Etienne, and communicating from the get-go, from the assessments, from those times, that this is not a sign of failure. So on the days, because they will come where they're not motivated. Oh, and by the way, guys, can we please let them know? I don't know why we don't do this. Can we please let them know that sometimes we're not motivated? For a lot of them, the destination isn't being fit. For a lot of them, the destination is always being motivated. Somehow we've created
which is impossible.
It's impossible. So let them know and saying, I get paid to do this. This is my career and my calling and my hobby and my everything. And there are days where I'm like, get up. And then share what you do. For me, maybe it's the music. For me, maybe it's all of us have used I'm just going to do, like, think about your cardio days. I'm just going to do 5 minutes. We've all used that. Why wouldn't we share that? They think that their goal isn't consistency. They think that their goal is 100% motivated all the time. And they see that, and it's really heartbreaking for them to constantly feel like they're failing at that. So explaining that that's not failure, but rather normal, and what you do on those days can be really helpful.
Yeah, and also we are talking about lack of motivation right now, but it can also be like less time right now, or less time in your mind. Like, depending on your career, maybe you are super busy this week, maybe you have a big project to give this week, and so those are all moments where the client has less time in his mind, has less time, and he should not feel bad for it. He should more feel accomplished with you, to have a B plan, to know what to do in this context. Mm-hmm. We are receiving a question from Katty into the chat that is asking us, can you suggest some screening forms and scientific article of self-efficacy expectation? Before you answer, for the info, Katty, in Hexfit by default, I know there's multiple documents and forms that you can send to the clients. I don't know the specific list, but if you chat with us or if you go look, you will find them, and you can send them to the client on a regular basis, on top of like being connected to the watch to see the lack of sleep or the lack of motivation of your client. So I know we already have some. I don't know which one. I don't know if, Nathalie, you have others screening forms.
The ones that are there are fantastic. If you want to so if you're looking for articles, anything that you look in terms of exercise psychology and behavior modification related to psychology will have a lot of these assessments that were there. That said, what the study tools you would use in a research study isn't necessarily what you would use every day with your clients. I would incorporate them as part of everything we do. And honestly, what I've used with most clients so that we can reuse it again and again, and it takes 5 minutes to assess, is a really simple scale of 1 to 10. How confident are you that you will stick with your exercise program or your exercise goals over the next 3 months? How do you feel that, you know what I mean? What are some of the results you were hoping to get, and in what timeline? And just something really quick like that, doing a quick scale of 1 to 10 is something that you'll see, and something that you'll be able to see there in terms of them having these honest conversations about them.
Yeah. And 1 to 10 is even a really good. We're working with Olympic teams in Quebec with Hexfit software. And at some point, they have tried a lot of things to make it more accurate. And at the end, they came back to the 1 to 10. So it's really instinctively good. The person is just clicking. It's instinctively good to screen any more qualitative information like motivation, quality of sleep, future beliefs in the goal and everything.
One of the things, and
everything works.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know it's not exactly what we're talking about today, but you and I talk about compensation a lot in the fitness industry. Maybe we'll give you everybody the next time we'll talk about this. But one of the things that helps also, guys, is having these alternatives in intensity and duration and everything else will significantly decrease your cancellation rate. They're really high level, sometimes up to 25% of cancellations. And we can come up with a policy till the cows come home. Most of us hate pushing those policies and charging people when they don't come. I have had plenty of people that are like, Nathalie, I'm just not going to make it. I can't do the 60 minutes. I'm not going to be able to do that. Or I'm not energized. I have an appointment. I can't, whatever. And I'm like, let's make this the best 30 minutes of self-care that you'll have today. And I'm a firm believer, and they know this, that any form of movement is an exercise in self-care. A burpee is self-care. A child's pose is self-care. But it's like, so I don't sell 60 minutes sessions. I sell your movement and health session for the day. Sometimes it's kitchen coaching because they're in the car and we're on Bluetooth and we do goal setting. That's still a session for me. That's still part of what I do. And so that's decreased a lot what I would have had as a potential revenue in the week and what I finish, because it's health coaching rather than just sets and reps and exercises.
Yeah. That will be a complete other subject to talk about memberships instead of hourly rates. For sure, everybody, stay tuned. We will do that one for sure. It's one of our main subject since always on our webinars. Everything we are talking about, for me, it's really making a link to daily habits, and this is a direction we have took at Hexfit to how can we help the professional to set up a daily habit for his client, for their clients, and that the client is able to check it every time it's completed. Daily habits is for us really I feel it's really something for the future of fitness to work on that. But so what is your approach when it comes to daily habits to make those kind of sustainable change?
It's interesting, you know. We know that I think we know now, or I hope we know now, that consistency matters more than intensity, duration, and do you know what I mean? So having people do that, what I like about one of the ways that we work it with Hexfit is you've got all the smart watches on there, because as much as I want to find out about the daily habit, for some people, the daily habit of tracking is the annoyance that gets them to not want to do it anymore. So if I've got it on my wrist all day long, and that's what my trainer will look at, they will look at. That said, I will certainly on the days that we're working out, do a really quick thing at the beginning, which is like, how have you nourished today's training session? And because I really want to know if they're like, all I had was coffee and red wine yesterday, I want to know that so we can assess it there. Looking at how their sleep was, looking at how they've rested, and moving more all the time. We also know, because we're seeing these studies, that even somebody who exercises 30 to 60 minutes 3 times a week, if they are sedentary the rest of the time, they are a sedentary person. So an active person isn't somebody that's sedentary and exercises 3 times a week. An active person is an active person that incorporates movement into every day. And I think having that daily habit that moves them towards an energetic life full of vitality so they can perform in whatever matters to them is a beautiful way to measure those daily habits and understand how daily habits can be linked to actually them performing and connecting those dots. So if you're going to measure, guys, use the measurements, discuss the measure, talk about them. If you're having them measure just for the principle of measuring, and it's not something that is related or relevant to them, they're just going to be annoyed about the fact that they have to send you measurements or that they have to send you results all the time.
Yeah, clearly. And this is a good point. Most of the trainer or fitness professional with who we are talking, they are not having anything in place to show the result to the clients. And so they are seeing the result. They are looking to the result, but they are not saying it. They are not showing it to the client. And then the client, if he's not seeing any result, he will just live because he thinks that there's nothing going on here, like he's paying in the emptiness. So really, I agree with that idea of how you are actually in place for showing an evolution to the client, for showing that. And you will really find, like just with the graph of motivation of our quality of sleep, which is 2 data that are super easy to assess every day, or at least every 3 days. It's really easy, and you will really see more that you go in the training with the person, that there's less 7s, there's less 6, there's less 5 and less. There's more 8, 9, and there's more peak to 10. You will see that. But the client do not know it, do not see it. You will need to show it and communicate it.
And communicate,
that's
because
really important.
Those lifestyle, those habits, those daily habits are exactly what I talked about before. Again, we're taking what we're using as tools and relating them to exercise, psychology, and behavior modification. Those are the process-oriented goals. So you see how, because we know what it's going to take, the journey it'll take to get them to that outcome, to get them to that destination. But even, I love what you're saying, calling it a result, right? Because they think the result is just, again, for most people, either the weight loss or the change in how they're fitting in their clothing, etc. For a lot of people that we work with, for some there are others, but seeing look, in 4 weeks, your sleep went from a 3 on 10 to a 7 on 10 is a result. And it's really fast. Again, these things happen quickly and oftentimes more quickly than traditional physical results will.
Yeah, and really to show, and I really, I'm continuing on that, really to show how much every movement is a fitness moment.
Yes.
I remember a discussion with my own coach when I was not having any time. He told me, but just do some stretching training, and I will create you a stretching training. And I was saying, no, if I'm not sweating, it's not a training. And he was saying, no, flexibility will help you after in the rest, in our other things. And this, it's something when you're not a fitness professional, it's look all easy for you guys. You have studies in that. But if you are not from that world and you didn't done those studies, I don't know that flexibility and stretching will help me later on something else that is my final goal. So make those links, make those things clear for the client. We don't know that.
And I'll actually take it a step further. And this is just, again, me as a person who looks at psychology and all of that. I would really invite us to not use the word just. and I know you used it because you communicated what it was. I don't use those sessions as on the days that you feel like crap, let's just stretch instead. And I love what mobility, stability, and all of that. Do you know what I mean? All those whole trends have come in versus, because stretching, everybody thought stretching was horrible till it became painful with like foam rollers, and then it became cool. And now all of a sudden mobility is something everybody does. So we use them as programmed. If your main program, if your main goal looks like it's high intensity, high energy and everything else, and you use the other ones only as backup plans when they don't feel good, it will feel like a failure. It will feel like a not good enough. But programming those days, having days where we're like, today's focus is balance. Everything we're going to do is focused on balance. It'll feel like a yoga session, but it's balance training. And balance training, as we all know, super critical to everything else. So there's ways that we can play around with programming for it to feel like we've got alternatives. Yes. So it to feel like it's not failure or second best. So we're moving them towards pleasure and giving them that feeling of success.
Clearly. And it will come back to the next subject of the webinar that we will do one day. That is, then you should never sell just a training program, but more sell your professional knowledge, your tracking, your health in general on a monthly basis. But this will be for another subject. In your opinion, what are the biggest mistakes a fitness professional could do when working with someone that has a bad relationship with exercises?
I think the biggest mistake we fitness professionals make, and I'll say that the industry has made, and it's one of the biggest takeaways for me over the last few years, is that we think that our job or profession is about sculpting bodies. And therefore we create facilities, we create programs, we create all these things really, really focused on that, when in reality, our job is saving lives. That's what we do. So making it focused on the bodies that we sculpt instead of the lives that we save is in general the biggest challenge that we have for that. We know we are a critical and essential part of preventative healthcare. It'll be really hard for anybody, including ourselves and our clients, to understand that until we do that shift towards what we're doing is saving lives. What we're doing is improving the quality of life that they have. We are not necessarily looking at lifespan, perhaps, but mainly health span, which I love that expression. It's not necessarily about living longer, but it's about living better through that life. These are the things that we do. We help people move away from pain and towards pleasure, not sculpting bodies. And so going from 15% of the population to 50% of the population, because instead of, we're not fighting, we're our competition isn't one another. Our competition is the pain of sedentary living. And once we realize that our competition of the pain of sedentary living, we open ourselves up to such a greater percentage of our communities, and we have incredible opportunities in front of us.
I love the way you are saying it. It's really that. It's instead of working against each other, it's how can we make a bigger pie? How can we triple 5 times the size of the actual market with more people that want to move? And the only way of doing that is to not just work with marathonian people, but to also work with people that want just a better lifestyle. And it's really one of our dream at Hexfit of how can we, and those webinars are one part of this project that we want to make a move in the industry. It's one part of it, but we really believe into that. How can we make the pie bigger for everybody? Thanks a lot, Nathalie. Will you have any advice or any takeaway, as we say in TED conference, any takeaway for people listening?
I would love for people to take the opportunity to reflect on the fact that we have never had so much more that we can do. If we look at where the population is understanding that health we just went through a health crisis. Health is a critical part of how we live. They want to be healthier. They desire to do that. Connecting us as the source of support for that is something that we can do. I know that sometimes when you look at that, it can be overwhelming. So focus in on the things that you can do best. Understand that there are things that we can do to attract those people even more, and learning our growth or shifting our growth towards the lifestyle, shifting our growth towards all of the different ways that we can be the best source to support someone's physical, mental, immune, and social health. That is us. So how do we keep growing, keep developing, keep sharing, keep collaborating and cooperating in order to bring that support to the population and have them identify as us as the source of that?
Great. That's a wonderful takeaway. Thanks a lot, Nathalie, for having joined us today and to have told us that much things, and to have free yourself like that. Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody to have listened to us during the webinar and to have took the time during your day to learn more about this subject and this topic and to make yourself a better fitness professional. This was the first one of a big series of videos that we will do, of webinar that we will do. They will have a little pause into October. Sadly, we're starting and we're already in pause. This is because I will not be able to do them all during October because of movement and traveling, but clearly we are back quickly. And so stay in touch with us. Keep our contacts on the web. You have our Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel. We have also an Instagram, so you can find us on Hexfit Trends. You can also find Nathalie if you have any question about everything we have talked. You have the Instagram and the Facebook in the chat right now. And also, and Nathalie, I let you present it, but the strengthening mental wellness through fitness that is popping in your screen.
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to, if you're curious about how physical activity has a direct impact on mental health and mental wellness, I created a workbook to help us get there. So it's 10 ways that we can integrate easily into our training sessions, into everything that we do, to help people understand that when they exercise and when they move and when they're active, they are also strengthening their mental wellness. So that's free. You guys can grab that, and happy to share that with you. Let me know if you have any questions as we strive towards better wellness and better health for everyone.
Great. Everybody, you have all the links. Click on the Learn More button. That is the black button normally. And in the chat, you have the Instagram, Facebook of Nathalie, and you have our YouTube and our Instagram from Hexfit. So you have a bunch of things to subscribe and just to click on like. But that will keep you as a good professional, fitness professional, and you will always learn more and more. I'm pretty sure about that. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks, everybody, to have participated in the chat. And Nathalie, clearly, we have already a new appointment that is about hourly rate, the dead of our
absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to reach out. What's mine is yours. Thanks, everybody.